and saving taxpayers billions and billions of dollars every single day. And there's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter. We don't look.
The president said that a percentage of Doge savings could maybe go back to the American people in the form of what he called Doge stimulus checks, something like 20%. How would that work?
Well, look, I mean, politically, that would be great for us, you know, you send everybody a check, but really, we have to think of it, I think, in a...
That just got everybody's attention, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
I just saw everybody look up all of a sudden.
I know.
Yep.
But if you think about our core principles, right, fiscal responsibility is what we do as conservatives. That's our brand. And we have a $36 trillion federal debt. We have a giant deficit that we're contending with. I think we need to pay down the credit card, right? That's what I think we need to do.
All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about the Doge dividend plan, which is a plan to give out $5,000 to net taxpayers after Doge cuts $2 trillion from the deficit. Now, what's fascinating about this proposal is not just the proposal in and of itself, but also the reflexive reactions to the proposal from both sides of the aisle. Like, for example, Democrats, all of a sudden, they are against handouts, right? They're saying, well, we're against this because we don't like handouts, right? That is what Democrats are saying right now, which is hilarious because their whole party is built on handouts, right? So Republicans, Mike Johnson, you guys saw his reaction. He basically said, no, we should pay down the credit card. We got to remember we're the party of fiscal responsibility and we shouldn't be handing out checks right now. And I'm like, okay, both of these reactions from the Democrats and the Republicans, that's the same reaction that I had when I first heard about the plan, right? Oh, $5,000 checks. Oh, that is a handout. That's inflationary. We don't need this, okay? We got to pay down the debt. But then I actually read the plan, okay, and the devil's in the details. And then I started to realize that, wait, hold on now. If we actually cut $2 trillion from the deficit in 2024, the deficit was $1.8 trillion. So if you cut $2 trillion, then you're now up $200 billion. Okay, you're in a $200 billion surplus. Now, if you take $400 billion of that $2 trillion savings and you use it as a refund check to net taxpayers, people who actually paid into the system, okay, as compensation for the waste, fraud, and abuse that the government used our taxpayer dollars on, and this would only be one time, this is a one-time payment, then you're talking about now being in a $200 billion deficit. And that is after the $5,000 Doge checks go out. So when you look at the current situation that we're in, $1.8 trillion in a deficit, right? Again, we have a $36 trillion debt, okay? Versus the Doge situation, right? The proposal, let's assume, again, all revenues stay the same, and they actually can cut $2 trillion in spending, okay? And then they use $400 billion of that to give out $5,000 checks to net taxpayers. Now you're talking about being $200 billion in the hole, which is much better, way better than $1.8 trillion in the hole, which is currently where we're at right now, okay? $1.8 trillion deficit without the Doge proposal versus the Doge proposal, you're now in a $200 billion deficit. So when I really started to think about it, I was like, wait, hold on. This is not actually really a handout, right? It's not a handout because it is going to people who are net taxpayers, people who give, who contribute more than they take from the system, right? And again, you're getting compensated because the government was wasting your money, okay? Even though you are a net taxpayer. So it's not a handout. And then I said, there's a $200 billion deficit versus a $1.8 trillion deficit that we have right now is also more fiscally responsible than anything that the GOP has ever done, right? So I'm just saying that some of the criticisms of this proposal I don't think are very intellectually honest. I don't see a world where you have more inflation due to giving out $5,000 checks, even though you end up with a $200 billion deficit versus a $1.8 trillion deficit where you don't give out any checks, right? I'm just saying, I think the $1.8 trillion deficit is much more inflationary than the $200 billion deficit. So I'm just saying, I find some of these criticisms to be fascinating arguments, and that's what we got to talk about here today from Michael Smerconish on CNN, who's going to get upset with this Doge advisor who actually came up with this Doge dividend plan that the president is currently considering. Because all of a sudden, the liberal media cares about the deficit and the debt, right? All of a sudden, they're now fiscal hawks, okay? As soon as President Trump proposes an idea that would make him extremely popular, now the liberal media is concerned about, okay, what about the debt, right? We got to pay down the debt. We got to pay it down, right? Which, again, it's hilarious when you actually, like, go over the numbers of the current situation versus the Doge plan, right? These people boohoo whine and crying about the debt. It just looks very silly, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
James Fishback, the CEO of Azoria, the originator of the Doge dividend. James, thank you for being here. How did this all come to pass?
Well, good morning, Michael. To tell you the truth, it came to me in a dream. I woke up, I called our head of research at Azoria. We met at Capitol Grill. We fleshed this thing out in 2 hours, and I'm honored that the president has endorsed it. This is a real plan to send the savings that Doge generates over the next couple of years right back into the pockets of hardworking Americans all across this country. They deserve it. It was their money in the first place, and they need a break.
Okay, I'm all for ridding the government of waste, fraud, and abuse. But at some level, isn't it all illusory? In other words, if there's a quote-unquote savings made by Elon Musk and Doge, we're still $36 trillion in debt. So there's no pie to cut up. There's no slice of the pizza that I can hand back to you unless we continue to borrow those funds.
Yeah, but see, again, what this guy is not realizing, because he didn't do the basic math on this, is that you're borrowing less, right? It's one thing to borrow 1.8 trillion. It's another to borrow just 200 billion, right? And you're only borrowing 200 billion one time because the Doge dividend checks only go out once, right? So every year moving forward, you are going to be looking at a $200 billion surplus, right? Assuming that things stay the same, okay? But I'm just saying that this idea that, well, this is such a big issue, like the criticism of the plan is that, well, we have $36 trillion in debt anyway, so like, hey, you know, we're still going to be borrowing money. It's like, yeah, but we're going to be borrowing less money, right? A lot less money, okay, than we're borrowing right now. If these people are so concerned about the amount of money that we're borrowing, they should be concerned about the current plan, right? The plan that is happening right now, okay, in regards to how much money the government is set to spend or to lose, right? That's what they really should be worried about, but they're not worried about that, right? And that's why a lot of this outrage is so fake to me, because I'm like, yo, if you're concerned about the deficit, you need to be raging about what's happening right now. You should have been raging for the last 4 years. Let's be real. None of these people wanted to have this conversation over the last 4 years of Joe Biden. None of these people wanted to talk about Kamala Harris's and her proposals, where she was just quite literally giving out handouts to people, okay? And she had no way of paying for it whatsoever. We all know that if Democrats were in office, by default, they would continue to drive up the deficit and the debt. But again, they're never outraged about it when they do it, right? When Democrats do it, they don't have anything to say. So I'm just saying that the timing of this outrage here from the media, the skepticism, again, it's just funny considering the context of the last 4 years and how they never had any concerns about all the spending that Democrats are doing. Now they got a concern about the spending of the Trump administration. Hilarious.
Our plan's really simple. Over the next couple of years, Doge will save a set amount of money. We're going to take 20% of that and put it right back in the hands of taxpayers. The other 80, as President Trump has pointed out, will go back to paying down the debt and narrowing the deficit. Here's the truth, Michael. For every $5 that Doge saves, as we believe calculated by the Congressional Budget Office when this whole project is said and done next summer, for every $5, $1 goes back to the pockets of American taxpayers. Here's why. They sent their money to D.C. to be spent in America, not to be abused abused, not to be disrespected, and not to be defrauded. That $20 million to Iraqi Sesame Street, that money sent for a transgender opera in Colombia, all at the same time, Michael, that we have roads and bridges crumbling. We're losing 900 Americans every day to deaths of despair, alcoholism, and suicide. 8 out of 10 black American fourth graders are not even reading at grade level. This is pathetic. The Americans sent their money to be spent in America. They were defrauded. They were lied to. They now deserve restitution. And the second point that President Trump, just one sec, Michael, the second point that President Trump brought up on Air Force One is that these Doge dividends will incentivize Americans to report waste, fraud, and abuse in their own community. Why? Why? Because the more that Doge saves, the bigger their Doge dividend check will be. Remember, in economics, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. We're giving every American.
I'm going to get to the economics. Come on, I gave you a chance for a great sound bite. You got and those soft power exercises make for great sound bites. But when you drill down, for example, on Sesame Street in Iraq, they often make sense. Joseph Nye from Harvard, who gets credited with the coinage of the word soft power. You know, you'd rather spend on that than bullets. But wait, you want to talk?
Wait. Again, this is CNN. CNN is arguing that Sesame Street to Iraq is a good use of money, right? Because somehow that's going to avoid a war, right? I mean, this is the argument that is being made, right? In terms of defending wasteful spending. But yet, this is the same dude that says, well, I'm concerned that when you give out the $5,000 Doge checks, you're still going to have to borrow money, right? You're going to be borrowing a lot less money, okay? $200 billion versus borrowing $1.8 trillion. But hey, I'm concerned you're still going to have to borrow some money. But we're borrowing money right now to do Sesame Street in Iraq, and this dude thinks it's okay, right? That's totally fine. But you can't borrow less money to give money to the American people, right? That is how nonsensical these people are, right? When you actually break down what they're saying, it's nonsensical.
Oh, there was a terrorist attack in Iraq last month that killed 40 people. It's clearly not working. Soft power and Sesame Street are not working. If there are terrorists, we need to kill the terrorists. We don't need to fund Big Bird and Elmo.
Maybe the terrorist would have been better off watching Big Bird than learning in a madrasa. Let me make my point. Put on the screen from the Peterson Foundation. This is where the rubber meets the road. We are $36 trillion in debt. I don't know if you can see that, but that's 106,121 for every single person in America. So if Elon Musk is successful in saving us money from waste, fraud, and abuse, and by the way, James, I hope that he is. I don't like the approach, but I like the fact that something's being done. There is no money in the till. We owe $36 trillion. We owe $106,000 each. So whatever the savings ought to be, it's not like President Trump's doing us a favor by giving us 20%. Everything ought to go to the debt because the Peterson people say by 2050, 50% of all revenue is going to go to satisfying interest on the debt. We should be paying the debt. Your response?
My response is this. We should be paying the debt, which is why the Doge dividend incentivizes every American to call out waste, fraud, and abuse, to lower the budget, to narrow the deficit, and to bring down the debt. Where was this emergency over the debt when we sent $350 billion to Ukraine to be wasted? Where was this emergency, Michael, on CNN when you guys were advocating $7,000 to migrants in Chicago? $7,000 a month per migrant. And now we want to spend $5,000 one time from President Trump to hardworking Americans. The migrants didn't deserve $7,000 a month. Hardworking Americans deserve a $5,000 check with President Trump's name on it. So enough with the double standard. Ukraine did not deserve $350 billion.
Okay, listen to me.
Bro, he makes an amazing point. Because this CNN anchor is quite literally making the case for Sesame Street in Iraq as a necessary expenditure, but at the same time, complaining about how we need to pay down the debt. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. These people are not being intellectually honest, right? Like, this is not an intellectually honest conversation, okay? It's not, right? Like, this is just silly talk. This is silly talk right now. But again, yes, none of these people were concerned when the money was going to illegal immigrants. None of these people were concerned when the money's going to Ukraine, when it's going to Africa, when it's going all across the world, when it's going everywhere except to the American people. None of these people are concerned. You come up with a plan that will not only significantly lower the deficit, which as of right now, again, there is no plan to do that from either party, to be honest with you. Not right now, okay? But you actually have a plan that will do that and to give the American people some of their money back. And these people who, again, don't have any other alternative, right? They don't have a good alternative outside of this. Again, they're complaining about the American people possibly getting their money back, while at the same time arguing that it is a good use of the money to send it overseas for Sesame Street in Iraq. Right? Again, this is insane. This is insanity.
Listen to me. This is Madoff-like. This is a Ponzi scheme.
No, Ukraine was a Ponzi scheme. The migrant funding was a Ponzi scheme. Hardworking Americans deserve a break.
James,
it was their money, Michael. It was their money.
James, give me a chance to speak. Theoretically, It's my program. We don't have the money, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a Ponzi.
So we didn't have the money for Ukraine, right? We didn't have the money for Ukraine. $350 billion.
I never do this. I don't want to be that guy. And do I have to silence your microphone so that I can respond to what you've said? Wow. Because there's so much fallacy in what you've just offered.
Please go ahead and refute it.
I have a very simple premise here. We're $36 trillion in debt. It's a fraud. As much as I want to see us cut waste, fraud, and abuse, it is an absolute fraud to say to the American people, because of what Musk is doing, we have $5,000 to give each of you. The only way we have $5,000 is if we're borrowing it, because we're that far in debt. I'm trying to meet you halfway, which is simply to say, what a good thing that finally we're going to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, albeit it shouldn't be in this haphazard fashion. But let's at least be honest with the American people that whatever we quote unquote save, we already owe. Now I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then I'm going to say, see you later. Go ahead.
Michael, let me say this. We're fellow Americans. We care about this issue, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to come on this program, but I got to speak truth here. At the end of the day, we have got to send the money back that is saved, just 20% of it. The other 80% goes down to paying the national debt and narrowing the deficit. To your point, yes, there has been a fraud against the American people, the Green New Scam, Ukraine, the migrant crisis. Their taxpayer dollars were sent abroad, were not sent at home, were not spent in America, not on healthcare, not on education. That ends with President Trump's leadership today. He is delivering on his promise of major government reform, Michael. The Doge dividend plan is bold, and Americans support it.
All right, I'm calling time on all of that. I appreciate your being here. I think we've each, I hope, made our respective points. Thank you.
Wow. What a clown. Right. This guy is a clown, bro. Again, just imagine saying we got to pay down the debt, guys. You don't understand. It's that important. But at the same time, we have to send millions of dollars overseas to Iraq for Sesame Street, right? How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. Again, these people are not serious, right? They're not serious people, man. They're not serious people. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.